I was standing in the lobby of First National Bank in Charleston, South Carolina, about to sign over everything I owned to my nephew, when the security guard walked up and handed me a folded note. The handwriting made my blood run cold because it belonged to someone I hadn't seen in 35 years. Don't sign anything. Marcus is lying to you. Meet me at Magnolia Cafe in 1 hour. Trust me one more time. It was signed simply, Jimmy. Before I explain how a ghost from my past saved me from losing $1 million and probably my life, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? And have you ever trusted the wrong person so completely that you almost lost everything? Drop a comment below, because what happened next taught me the hardest lesson of my 62 years on this earth. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 months earlier, I was sitting on my porch in Mount Pleasant watching the sunset over the marsh. The house was too quiet. It had been that way since Margaret died 2 years ago. 40 years of marriage. And then suddenly I was alone in a 4-bedroom house with nothing but memories and silence. My phone rang. It was Marcus, my sister's boy. Uncle Richard, hey. I know I haven't called in a while. His voice was warm, apologetic. I'm really sorry about that. Work's been crazy. Marcus, I said, surprised. It's good to hear from you. How long had it been? 6 months? A year? I'd stopped counting. After my sister Linda died 5 years ago, Marcus and I had drifted apart. He was busy with his life in Atlanta. I understood. I was thinking, he continued, maybe I could come visit this weekend? I've been feeling bad about not staying in touch. You're the only family I have left. Something in my chest loosened. Of course. I'd love that. That Friday, Marcus showed up with an expensive bottle of bourbon and stories about his marketing job in Atlanta. He was 34 now, tall like his father had been, with Linda's dark eyes. We sat on that porch for hours talking, and for the first time in 2 years, the house didn't feel so empty. He came back the next weekend, and the next. Soon, it was a regular thing. Every Friday evening, Marcus would drive down from Atlanta. We'd have dinner, watch baseball, talk about his mother. He'd help me fix things around the house, update my computer, organize my paperwork. Uncle Richard, he said one evening about a month in, I've been thinking, you're alone in this big house. What if something happened to you? What if you fell or had a medical emergency? I'm 62, not 92, I laughed. I know, but still. He leaned forward, concerned. Have you thought about updating your will? Making sure everything's in order? I hadn't. Margaret had handled all that. After she died, I just couldn't face the paperwork. I could help you, Marcus offered. I know a great estate attorney in Charleston. We could get everything organized, make sure your assets are protected. It seemed thoughtful, caring. I was touched that he was worried about me. Over the next few weeks, Marcus introduced me to Robert Chen, an estate attorney with a fancy office downtown. We had meetings, lots of them. Robert explained trusts and beneficiaries and tax implications. It was overwhelming, but Marcus was there for every appointment, taking notes, asking questions. The thing is, Uncle Richard, Marcus said one afternoon as we left Robert's office, you need someone as executor, someone you trust to handle everything if something happens. Margaret's gone. You don't have kids? He paused. I know it's a lot to ask, but I'd be honored to do it. To take care of everything the way Mom would have wanted. His eyes were wet. He looked so much like Linda in that moment. Of course, I said. You're my family. We set up a trust, put the house in it, the investment accounts, everything. Marcus would be the trustee if I became incapacitated. It all seemed reasonable, responsible, even. Then one Tuesday afternoon in late September, everything changed. I was at Edisto Beach, taking my usual morning walk. The shore was empty, except for an older man surf fishing about 50 yards down. I didn't pay him much attention until he started walking toward me. Richard Pemberton, he called out. Is that really you? I stopped. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. The man got closer. He was maybe 70, weathered face, gray hair under a Carolina Panthers cap. Then I saw his eyes, bright blue, the same eyes that had looked at me across a foxhole in Vietnam 50 years ago. Jimmy, I breathed. Jimmy Torres. We stood there on that beach, two old men staring at each other. Jimmy Torres had been my best friend in the Marines. We'd served together in Vietnam. Survived things I still didn't talk about. After we came home in 1972, we'd stayed close for a few years. But life happened. I went to college on the GI Bill, met Margaret, started a career in commercial real estate. Jimmy moved around, worked construction, never settled in one place. We lost touch sometime in the late 80s. I'd tried to find him a few times over the years, but Jimmy Torres was a common name, and he'd never been much for staying in one place. 35 years, Jimmy said, shaking his head. 35 years, brother? We walked for an hour, catching up. Jimmy had been living in Beaufort for the past decade, doing handyman work, fishing, staying sober after some rough years. He'd gotten married and divorced twice, had a daughter somewhere in Texas he hadn't spoken to in years. "What about you?" he asked. "You doing okay?" "I heard about Margaret." "I'm sorry, man." "How did you know?" "I saw the obituary in the Post and Courier. Wanted to reach out, but I figured you had people. Family. Just a nephew now. My sister's boy, Marcus." Over the next few weeks, Jimmy and I fell back into our old friendship like no time had passed. We'd meet for breakfast at the Magnolia Cafe downtown, or he'd come by the house to help with projects. He was staying in a small apartment in Beaufort, barely making rent, doing odd jobs. "You should move closer," I told him one morning over coffee. "There's plenty of room at my place. You could rent out the garage apartment." "Richard, I can't afford much." "I don't need much. Just some company. Maybe help around the house." He moved in the next week. It was like having a piece of my younger self back. Someone who remembered the man I'd been before real estate, before Margaret, before everything got complicated. Then, one Saturday, Marcus showed up unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting him until the evening, but there he was at noon, looking agitated. "Who's that?" he asked, watching through the window as Jimmy worked on fixing the dock behind the house. "That's Jimmy, old friend from the service. He's staying in the garage apartment." Something changed in Marcus's expression. For just a second, I saw something cold. Then it was gone, replaced by a smile. "That's great, Uncle Richard. I'm glad you have company." But over the next few visits, I noticed things. Marcus would make little comments. "Uncle Richard, you sure you know this guy? It's been a long time. People change." Or he'd pull me aside. "I just want to make sure he's not taking advantage of you. You're a generous person. Some people see that as an opportunity." I brushed it off. Marcus was just protective. He cared about me. Then Jimmy said something that stuck in my mind. It was a Thursday evening. We were sitting on the porch with beers, watching the sun go down. "Your nephew," Jimmy said carefully. "He asked you for money lately?" "No. Why?" "Just something I noticed. He's been asking a lot of questions about your finances, about the house. He's helping me organize my estate." Jimmy was quiet for a moment. "Richard, I don't want to overstep, but I've seen guys like him before. Smooth talkers. They get close, make themselves invaluable. Then, when you trust them completely, they make their move. Marcus isn't like that. He's family. Family can be the worst sometimes," Jimmy said quietly. "Just be careful, brother. That's all I'm saying." I was annoyed. Jimmy didn't know Marcus. He didn't understand our relationship. But then, small things started adding up. I found Marcus in my home office one afternoon when he thought I was napping. He jumped when I walked in, quickly closing the folder he'd been looking through. "Just organizing some paperwork for you," he said smoothly. Another time, I overheard him on the phone in the guest room. "Yeah, everything's in place. Another month, maybe 2. Then we move forward. I'm telling you, it's airtight." He has no idea. When I asked who he was talking to, he said it was about a work project. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. I had a meeting with Robert Chen, the estate attorney. Routine review of the trust documents. Marcus was supposed to come, but he called that morning saying he was sick. Food poisoning. Could I handle it alone? I went anyway. Sat in Robert's office while he went through paperwork. "So everything transfers to Marcus as trustee upon your incapacitation or death," Robert said. "The house, the investment accounts, the life insurance. Total value roughly $1.3 million. "Wait," I said. "Upon death?" Yes. But incapacitation? What does that mean exactly? Robert looked surprised. If you're declared mentally incompetent or physically unable to manage your affairs, a doctor's signature would be required. Of course. And then Marcus controls everything? As trustee, yes. It's what we discussed. What you and Marcus agreed to. But I didn't remember agreeing to that. I remembered setting up the trust for after I died. Not before. Robert, can you send me copies of everything? All the documents we've signed? Of course. Is something wrong? I'm not sure yet. I drove home with a sick feeling in my stomach. At the house, Jimmy was replacing a broken board on the front steps. You okay? He asked, seeing my face. You look like you saw a ghost. I need you to look at something. We spread the trust documents across the kitchen table. Jimmy wasn't a lawyer, but he'd worked enough jobs to understand contracts. Richard, he said after 20 minutes, this isn't just an inheritance trust. Look at this clause. If you're declared incompetent by a licensed physician, Marcus becomes trustee immediately. He controls everything. The house, your money, all of it. But I'd have to be actually incompetent. Says here the determination can be made by any licensed physician. Doesn't specify who chooses the doctor. My hands were shaking. What are you saying? I'm saying, if Marcus wanted to, he could get a crooked doctor to sign off, declare you incompetent, and take control of everything. Legally. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus's visits, his helpfulness, his concern. Had it all been calculated? Was Jimmy right? At 2 a.m, I did something I'm not proud of. I went into the guest room where Marcus stayed on weekends and searched his belongings. In his laptop bag, I found a folder. Inside were documents. Lots of them. A nursing home brochure for Serenity Oaks Memory Care in North Charleston. Notes in Marcus's handwriting. Early-stage dementia. Needs 24/7 care. Family no longer able to manage. A letter, printed but not sent, addressed to Robert Chen. After careful consideration and consultation with medical professionals, we've determined Uncle Richard needs to be placed in memory care. As trustee, I'll be selling the house to cover care costs. And worst of all, a printed email exchange with someone named Dr. Harrison Vance. The subject line, Competency Evaluation Services. The emails made me sick. Dr. Vance offered to provide documentation of mental incompetence for a fee of $25,000. All he needed was one 30-minute meeting with the patient. Marcus's response. Perfect. We'll schedule for mid-October. Make it convincing. Early Alzheimer's. Unable to manage finances or living independently. I sat on the floor of that guest room, documents scattered around me, and finally understood. Marcus had been planning this for months, maybe longer. The visits, the helpfulness, the trust, all of it had been leading to this moment. He was going to have me declared incompetent, put me in a nursing home, and take everything. The house I'd lived in for 30 years, the money Margaret and I had saved, all of it gone. And it was perfectly legal. I'd signed the documents myself. Jimmy found me there at 3 a.m, still sitting on the floor. I was wrong about him, I said. I was so wrong. Jimmy looked at the documents. His face went hard. We need to move fast. If he's planning this for mid-October, that's 2 weeks away. What can I do? I signed everything. It's all legal. Not if we can prove fraud. Coercion. But we need evidence. Real evidence. Over the next week, Jimmy and I worked carefully. We couldn't let Marcus know we suspected anything. I had to act normal during his weekend visits, pretend nothing had changed. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, sitting across the table from someone I'd loved like a son, knowing he was planning to steal my life. Jimmy set up a hidden camera in my home office. We needed Marcus on tape, saying something incriminating. The following Friday, Marcus arrived as usual. We had dinner, watched the Braves game. Then I brought up the trust. I've been thinking, I said carefully, about the incapacity clause. It makes me nervous, having someone else control everything while I'm still alive. Marcus's face remained neutral. Uncle Richard, that's just a safety net, in case something happens. But what if I just want to change it? Update the documents? For the first time, I saw irritation flash across his face. You can't just change it. We spent months setting this up correctly. If you change it now, you could mess up the whole tax structure. I'm not comfortable with it anymore. Uncle Richard, his voice got sharper. You're 62 years old. You're starting to forget things. I've noticed. Little things. Repeating stories. Forgetting appointments. I don't forget appointments. Last week, you missed your dentist appointment. You called me asking what day it was. I'd been tired that day. Nothing more. But Marcus was building a narrative. This is exactly why the trust is important, he continued. You're getting older. Things happen. The trust protects you. From what? From yourself. From making bad decisions. From people like your friend Jimmy taking advantage of you. Jimmy isn't taking advantage of me. He's living in your garage apartment, paying practically nothing. He shows up after 35 years and suddenly he's your best friend again? That's convenient. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Now. Marcus stood up, his mask finally slipping completely. You're being irrational. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I know what you're planning. His face went cold. You don't know anything. I found the emails. Dr. Vance. The nursing home brochures. All of it. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. You can't prove anything. Those documents will disappear. And frankly, Uncle Richard, who's going to believe you? A 62-year-old man living alone, probably drinking too much, getting paranoid about his own nephew? His voice was calm, almost gentle. I'll tell them you've been acting erratically, accusing me of wild conspiracies. That's textbook early dementia. I have copies. And I have a lawyer, a good one. He grabbed his jacket. You want to fight this? Go ahead, but I'm the trustee. The documents are legal. You signed them yourself. By the time any court sorts this out, you'll be in Serenity Oaks and I'll have sold this house. He walked toward the door, then turned back. You should have just died quietly, Uncle Richard. Would have been easier for everyone. After he left, I sat there shaking. Jimmy came out from where he'd been listening in the kitchen. Got it all, he said, holding up his phone. Every word. The next morning, we went to a different lawyer, Sharon Blackwell, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in elder abuse and fraud. She listened to the recording, reviewed the documents I'd found, and nodded slowly. This is fraud, she said. Coercion, undue influence, probably conspiracy to commit guardianship abuse. We can fight this. How long will it take? Months, maybe a year. And he's right that the trust documents are technically legal. You did sign them. My stomach sank. But, she continued, we can file an emergency injunction, freeze the trust, and start criminal proceedings. I can have that filed by Monday. That weekend was the longest of my life. I kept expecting Marcus to show up, to make his move. But he stayed silent. Monday morning, Sharon filed the injunction. Tuesday afternoon, Marcus's lawyer called. By Wednesday, we were sitting in a conference room downtown. Marcus looked different. Harder. The nephew who'd seemed so caring was gone. In his place was a stranger. The meeting was brutal. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint me as mentally declining, confused, paranoid. They brought up my drinking after Margaret died, the fact that I lived alone, that I'd let a virtual stranger move into my garage apartment. But Sharon was better. She played the recording, produced the emails with Dr. Vance, showed the timeline of Marcus's visits, how they'd increased right after Margaret died, how he'd isolated me from other friends and family. By the end, Marcus's lawyer was sweating. We're prepared to file criminal charges, Sharon said calmly. Fraud, attempted exploitation of an elder, conspiracy, or you can sign a complete release, give up all claims to the trust, and walk away. Marcus looked at me with pure hatred. You're making a mistake. No, I said. The mistake was trusting you. He signed. It took 3 hours of negotiation, but he signed. Every document, every claim, gone. As he was leaving, he stopped at the door. You know what's funny, Uncle Richard? I didn't even need the money. I make 6 figures in Atlanta. I have my own investments. Then why? Because I could. Because you were pathetic and lonely and easy. Because after my mom died, I realized I didn't owe you anything. You weren't my family. You were just some old man with money." He walked out. I never saw him again. That night, Jimmy and I sat on the porch with beers, watching the sunset over the marsh. "Thank you," I said, "for seeing what I couldn't. You would have done the same for me. You did do the same for me, back in Nam." I thought about that, about friendship that survived decades of silence, about blood family that turned out to be poison, about the difference between the two. I updated my will the next week. Sharon helped me set up a proper trust, one with protections and oversight. Jimmy was named executor, not because he needed the money or wanted it, but because he'd proven, after 35 years of silence, that he'd show up when it mattered. The house in Mount Pleasant is still mine. I'm still here, watching sunsets over the marsh. Jimmy's still in the garage apartment, though he pays rent now, insists on it. We have breakfast at Magnolia Cafe every Thursday. We fish off the dock on weekends. We watch baseball and tell old stories. Marcus sent one email 6 months after everything ended. It was short, "You'll die alone." I wrote back just as short, "No, I won't. I have family, real family, the kind that shows up." Here's what I learned through all this, and I want you to really hear me. Blood doesn't make family. I spent months being manipulated by my own nephew, someone I'd loved and trusted, because I thought blood meant something automatic. But family isn't automatic. It's chosen. It's built on actions, not DNA. Jimmy Torres hadn't seen me in 35 years. We'd lost touch, drifted apart, lived completely separate lives. But when it mattered, he was there. He saw what I couldn't see. He protected me when I was too blind to protect myself. That's family. If you're watching this and you've got people in your life who claim to love you but only show up when they need something, listen carefully. Watch their actions, not their words. Do they call only when they want money? Do they help only when there's something in it for them? Do they make you feel guilty for having boundaries? Those aren't family. Those are users. Real family shows up. They notice when something's wrong. They protect you, even when you don't want protection. They tell you hard truths because they'd rather hurt your feelings than let you get hurt worse. I was 62 years old when I learned this lesson. Don't wait as long as I did. And to answer Marcus's email, no, I won't die alone. Because I finally understand what family really means. So here's my question for you. The same one I asked at the start. Have you ever trusted the wrong person so completely that you almost lost everything? And when you figured it out, who showed up to help you? Drop your story in the comments, because I've learned something else too. When we share these stories, when we warn each other, we become family. A whole community of people who understand that sometimes the ones who hurt us most are the ones we're supposed to trust. And sometimes the ones who save us are the ones we'd lost along the way. Subscribe if this story meant something to you. Hit that notification bell, because I've got more stories to tell. True stories about betrayal and survival and learning who your real family is. And remember, choose the people who choose you, not the people who are supposed to choose you, the people who actually do. That's the difference between blood and family. That's how you survive.